Hi, everybody. Mitch Tanenbaum here. Thanks for joining me today. This is the Security News Update for December 11th, 2023. Can you believe that 2023 is almost over? In the Security and Privacy Alerts Department, one of the challenges of these big outsourcing deals is that when you have a problem, it can affect a lot of folks. So um, there is a court records tracking system that's used in a number of states. Um, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Ohio, Tennessee for this particular system. Um, and it got compromised. So things like witness lists and mental health records and allegations of abuse and other documents were exposed. Um, the challenge, of course, apparently it's not hard to exploit the bugs in these systems. So it doesn't require a rocket scientist or anything like that, which is not terribly encouraging, of course, but it is what it is. And of course, your ability to sue the government when they screw up is somewhat limited. So, the folks that were compromised and potentially their safety was compromised. They're just kind of out of luck. It's a real challenge because obviously, you don't have much of a choice in terms of giving the court system the information if you're involved in a court case. So, what do you do? So, next, I just shake my head sometimes with these things. So apparently, there's a cybersecurity. This is not apparently. There is a cybersecurity company named TX1, um, and they disclosed the details of 10 unpatched vulnerabilities in Lloyd Tech's building automation software after both they and CISA tried to get these guys to patch their software for 2 years. Um, such as the challenge of getting companies to act responsibly. Current law basically doesn't require companies to go off and patch their systems, even if they're buggy. Um, and they'd say that the license agreement protects them, that it says, you use it at your own risk. So these cybersecurity firm just kind of outed them. So at least now people know that if you're using the Lloyd Tech building automation software, it's not secure, and you kind of do that at your own risk, which I guess is the lesser of the evils. I'm not sure, but I guess. Um, next, Sierra Wireless, which is a big tech provider. Um, Apparently, their routers, which are used in all kinds of critical infrastructure from government to energy to transportation, emergency services, uh, is a product called AirLink, and it's either operational technology or IoT, kind of sort of the same thing in a lot of ways. Um, are vulnerable, and the group of bugs is called Sierra 21. And uh, the firm found using, I assume, the Shodan search engine, 86,000 vulnerable routers connected directly to the internet. I'm sure the Chinese have also found them at this point. So, uh, you know, um, one is rated critical out of the 21. Nine are rated high. Some of them are easy to exploit. Some of them are hard to exploit. But it's all out in the open now. So, these systems which protect critical infrastructure are used as part of critical infrastructure now at risk. Next, Senator Wyden is warning that governments apparently are spying on our users. Um, push notifications, which are those notifications that come to your phone automatically, even when your phone's locked. Um, Apple and Google have access to that because it runs through their servers. And apparently, some governments, unnamed by Wyden, have been asking for this data. And apparently, the way the current law is written, Apple and Google can't even talk about the fact that these governments are asking for this data. Um, the data, of course, is tied to your device, which is tied to your account, which is tied to you. So it's not anonymized, to say the least. Um, and we shall see. Wyden asked for some information on what's going on and stuff. So maybe now that it's seeing the light of day, maybe the carriers will be able to report on what's going on, and we can see whether it's a big problem or not. Next, in the important issues department, um, there was an issue that recently with a fake WordPress patch. Um, and I get calls or emails from clients at least once a week asking, is this email legit? Is this email legit? And like, 99% of the time it's not. It's almost always spam. Um, occasionally I guess, a legitimate one makes it in there. But this one, if you install this so-called WordPress patch, it installs an admin backdoor on your WordPress site secretly, and it also will attempt to steal your credentials. So, not a great situation. And bottom line is you need to validate. If you get something like that, in terms of an email, you need to validate that it's legit. And like I said, most of the time it's not, unfortunately. Next, researchers are warning that GPTs like Chat GPT, large language models, can be manipulated for malicious. And this is interesting. So what they did is they figured out how you put data inside of images and audio streams that trigger the large language models to do things that they shouldn't do. Um, so, as part of this whole conversation about AI and large language models, you need to be really thoughtful about what you use it for, how you use it, and how you protect yourself, because apparently the bad guys are figuring out how they can enrich themselves. Next, in the legislative and legal department, um, God, Facebook can't win. Facebook is being sued for requiring users to pay for non-tracking version in the EU. So in the EU, they have a requirement under the GDPR to allow users to use their software without being tracked. Um, their solution to that, which is no different, for example, than Netflix, is if you pay for it, then we don't track you because we're making the money and we don't need to sell your data. uh, Max Schrems, the privacy guy, doesn't seem terribly happy with that, and he thinks that they should offer a service in the EU where Facebook doesn't track you and doesn't charge you for it. That's called charity. Uh, who knows what the EU court will do? I'm sure it'll make it all the way up to the Court of Justice of the European Union, the EU's top court. I'm sure that'll take 3, 4, 5 years before it gets there. It hasn't even made it at the lower court at this point. So we shall see. I don't think it seems reasonable that you should say that Facebook should go off and not make any money, although a lot of people would certainly agree with that. Um, but they're a profit making business. So either you pay with your attention or you pay with your pocketbook. It would seem reasonable to me, but Schrems disagrees. So we shall see where that goes. Next, there's a Florida water agency, the St. Johns River Water Management District, which admitted to being hacked. Now, we've seen a number of critical infrastructure folks where we think they've been hacked. This one they admitted. The good news is that these guys are kind of a industry trade group or something like that. They don't actually run water treatment plants. I'll talk about one that does that got hacked recently. Um, and we just saw that there's a water district in Pennsylvania and a water district in Texas, in Frisco, Texas, that were hacked. Um, the Texas district was much larger than the Pennsylvania district, but it appears that in the case of Texas, it affected their business network. In the case of the Pennsylvania district, it shut down a water booster station. So that is operational in nature. And these guys are going kind of falling like flies. It's only a matter of time before something really bad happens. And these guys, the feds tried to go off and increase the oversight of the districts, but the districts pushed back and said, you don't have authority to go do that. Congress, of course, isn't too busy fighting with itself to actually do anything useful. So don't expect any help from Congress. So we shall see. Uh, in the education department, Google has figured out how to make Chat GPT spit out raw training data, which is kind of cool. Um, you know, everybody's trying to figure out how to use AI. Sorry for my cough drop here, but I'm trying not to cough on you while I'm talking. Um, but they got it to spit out verbatim text from CNN, WordPress blogs, fandom wikis, terms of service agreements, Wikimedia, all kinds of stuff. Uh, this could be relevant to the various lawsuits that content creators have filed against Chat GPT, saying that you're stealing our content, and they're saying, their defense is, well, there's no way you can actually find out that it's your content that this thing was trained on. Well, apparently that's not exactly true, so we shall see. In the breaches department, Staples has confirmed that they're hit by a ransomware attack um, that originally came out on Reddit, not on Staples. This is one of those things where you just can't hide this crap. If you try to hide it, then you'll get outed. You're much better off just fessing up and saying what's going on. To give details, but don't just stick your head in the sand. Um, it affected things like their help desk software, Zendesk, VPN access, print, email, phone lines, and other systems. I just happened to be in a Staples store the other day. I know the manager, and he said he usually gets 25 to 50 print jobs a day, and this is in a little suburban town, by email, which he's getting none of. And of course, people coming to the store saying, "Is my order ready?" And he has to say, "Oh, well, we actually didn't get your order." Um, so you multiply 25 to 50 print jobs at a small store times 1,000 stores. That's a lot of revenue that they're losing. Um, probably they'll get some of that back, but customers also cannot order online. So this is kind of shades of what happened to Ace Hardware just recently. I don't know that the attack is the same, but conceptually what it did to the business is the same. Um, you know, and even in the case of the store, their phones aren't working, so not a good situation. Um, next, in the hacks department, um, the imaging software folks that do medical imaging, they are just like hospitals and other, um, medical providers. Just don't seem to understand the concept that they're going to get hacked if they don't spend money on security. Uh, this week is the East River Medical Imaging Company in New York that lost data on 600,000 patients. Um, in Texas, South Austin Health Imaging lost data on 100,000 patients. These are two of at least a half dozen medical imaging providers. It's not doctors, it's not um, billing practices, it's not hospitals, it's just medical imaging providers. And two biggies. Two guys, 700,000 records. Um, next, you know, it's just a challenge. In England, hackers broke into, or maybe they just paid somebody. I don't know. Uh, the hospital, the King Edward VII Hospital, and stole a whole bunch of medical records. Um, amongst the medical records were those belonging to Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, and some other royals. Now, the hospital says that the medical records of the royal family are kept separately and remain unaffected. So something doesn't jive here, since these guys say they have the medical records of the former queen and prince. So we shall see. The obviously the UK authorities are looking at this to try to figure out what's going on, but just they're just victims, just like you and me. Next, and another AI model cracking open like a egg on the side of a bowl. Um, you know, researchers found over 1,000 AI tool authentication tokens. Those are the things that developers use to authenticate themselves to the AI tool on GitHub and tools like that. Um, the tokens that they found give the holder, different levels of permissions depending on which particular token it was. But that's not hard to find. And now that people know to go look in places like GitHub um, for tokens, they're probably going to look harder, and that includes the Chinese. Um, Next, keep this date in mind for the moment, May 7th, 2025. Uh, Back after 9/11, the feds decided that state driver's licenses were too easy to forge, which, in fairness, they were. Um, so they came up with a model for something they call Real ID, which is a much more secure, not completely secure, but much more secure version of driver's license. The states complain like hell as an unfunded mandate, blah, blah, blah. And so 20 plus years after 9/11, we still don't have states that require that, fully move. There's only 4 states actually that require real ID compliant IDs. There's a lot more that'll have it but don't require it. The thing is that assuming that the feds don't uh, blink again, and we don't know whether they will or they won't. So far, they haven't. After May 6, 2025, if you want to get an airplane, you better have a real ID compliant ID, and that could obviously be a passport or a passport card or a global traveler card. So doesn't necessarily have to be um, uh, a, um, a driver's license, but it's going to be sheer chaos at airports if they don't blink. Right now, we're only halfway there. Um, Congress, in its infinite wisdom, uh, tasked the TSA. Remember, these are the same guys that didn't catch Colonial Pipeline, and by some reports, miss about 50% of the guns at some airports that make it through TSA. To come up with a secure digital ID uh, and roll it out by that date, not just design it, but implement it and roll it out and get people enrolled. Well, there's no way that can happen in 18 months. It's just not going to happen. So, as opposed to say tasking NIST, who does this for a living, they task TSA. Congress does not always have their smarts engaged. Um, but on the other hand, if it hasn't been a problem for the last 20 years after 9/11, maybe it's not a problem for the next 20 years, but that doesn't mean they're going to change the law. I was talking about healthcare a minute ago. We've seen these hospitals really getting whacked right and left by hackers, and the feds have a proposed draft, and it takes so long to get anything done in the federal bureaucracy. But what they're proposing is to tie reimbursements to folks' cybersecurity practices. And it doesn't mean if you get hacked, you're not going to get reimbursed, but there, and I haven't looked at the details of what they're proposing, but basically they're saying you got to have certain cybersecurity governance processes in place, and if you do, then we'll reimburse you at one rate, and if you don't, then they'll reimburse you at a different rate. And reimbursements are always a big thing for hospitals, so I'm guessing that might possibly get their attention. Challenge is, what do you spend money on? Do you spend money on patient care? Do you spend money on cybersecurity? Do you spend money on people's salaries? I mean, there's a limited amount of money, and how do you deal with this? So that's a challenge for sure. And lastly, the news of the week. Um, as I said before, the U.S. has warned that now they're saying it's Iran, broke into multiple U.S. water facilities, not just the one or two that we've heard about, like Frisco and Pennsylvania. Um, Also, HP has admitted that they don't like the fact that you can go buy toner or ink from somebody other than them, and they don't get all that revenue. They've priced the devices working on the assumption that they're going to get the toner revenue so they can reduce the initial cost of the device, which I understand. But people, you know, um, think that they have to think for number one, which is I'm going to go off and reduce my cost. I'm going to take the cheap printer and get toner from a third party. So they've started a subscription model like everybody else, and the idea is to get people to subscribe to toner, and then they get revenue forever. The subscription models, I think, start at like $5 a month and potentially go up to $25 a month, depending on, I don't know, usage or whatever. So that's interesting. As long as you understand what you're getting into, then that's not a big deal. But if you don't understand, then that's potentially a problem. But HP says that revenue from that using that model is up 20%. So they kind of like that. Next, hackers, can you imagine this? Compromise federal agencies that are using an obsolete, unsupported version of Cold Fusion. First of all, I didn't know anybody was still using Cold Fusion, but apparently people are. And they're using old versions that are no longer being patched and that have bugs. Well, sorry. Multiple agencies have gotten compromised as a result of that. Next, Microsoft has hired a new CISO and deputy CISO. The previous CISO had been there for 14 years. The new one has been there for about 4 months. And this is part of their new security program that they're trying to push, which I think is a good idea. But I don't think I'd take that role if it was offered to me. That is, first of all, you have one hell of a target painted on your back. And second of all, it's just the organization is so challenged in so many ways that I think you got a real problem there. And lastly, there is a reports of a critical Bluetooth design flaw that affects. Interestingly, it doesn't seem to affect Windows devices. It's a combination of a design flaw and I think bad implementation. But bottom line is a rogue Bluetooth device pretends it's a keyboard, and because in that theory there is no keyboard for the device to interact with until this thing is approved, it kind of lets it be approved without authenticating it, which of course the hackers love. And it does seem to affect Macs and iDevices and Android devices and Linux devices. So because there's a design flaw combined with an implementation flaw, maybe vendors will come out with some workaround to try to reduce the attack surface. But fundamentally, the only way to really fix it is to change the Bluetooth spec, and that's not something that happens very easily or very quickly. So that's all we have for today. If you need some assistance, please reach out to us. We'd appreciate that. Share this with your friends. And until next time, stay safe.
Turnkey Cybersecurity and Privacy Solutions offers the complete cybersecurity program for small to medium-sized businesses. They include everything needed to secure your business and meet compliance requirements. Visit our website at turnkeycybersecurityandprivacysolutions.com to learn more.